Welcome everyone at the GRN webinar on Enabling Writers Project in Indonesia and Philippines. Today's webinar will highlight Indonesia and Philippines Enabling Writers Project best practices, success stories, and lessons learned from the two countries. In this webinar, we have presenters from the two countries, that is from Indonesia and Philippines. And from Indonesia, we have Dr. John Tija. Dr. John Tija works with the Yayasan Suriname Foundation of Indonesia, and he was Enabling Writers Project Manager since its launch in Jakarta in November 2016. Dr. John also is a linguistic researcher and has been involved in mother tongue-based basic education in Indonesia in the efforts of producing children reading materials in local languages, specifically in Bahasa language. Accompanied by John is Pak Singh Prajoga from the Center for Curriculum and Books, representing the government of Indonesia in this webinar. Mr. Pak Sigi is a book developer of the Ministry of Education. He will also be presenting in this webinar for the Pakistan best practices, for the Indonesia best practices and lessons learned. From Philippines, we have Dr. Jestoni Babia. Dr. Jestoni Babia is the Dean of the College of Education and the Graduate School of Education at the University of San Jose Recolletas in Philippines. He is also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Coalition for Better Education in Philippines. With Enabling Writers Project, Dr. Jestoni served as the country project manager for Enabling Writers Project in Philippines. Also, Dr. Jestoni has represented the Philippines in several international teacher education and in Japan. He has led more than 40 teacher education projects covering a wide range of topics involving information and communication technology for public school teachers, certification programs, capacity building, and professional development. He is known for leadership roles in education throughout the Asiatic sphere of the world. Another presenter from Philippines is Lea Mai Ladonga. Lea Ladonga works with the University of San Jose Recolletas in Philippines. And with Enabling Writers Project, Lea served as pedagogy specialist for Enabling Writers workshops in Philippines. She is also a vocal advocate of Bloom Software model. Lea trains fellow teachers in content and pedagogical skills enhancements using mother tongue language in the efforts of increasing classroom productivity and comprehension among young learners. Lea has actively participated in the development and betterment of pre-service teachers in Philippines through crafting and revisiting teacher education policy and its curriculum with partner universities and institutions. We also have government representative from Philippines, Dr. Emiliano Alnaya, who is a chief of education of curriculum development. We will have him in the presentation. And my name is Aristarch Limo from Global Reading Network. I'll be moderating this webinar and provide an overall overview of Enabling Writers Program. The webinar will use two languages, that is English and Bahasa Indonesia. Once again, I welcome you all presenters and participants to this webinar, and I hope you will enjoy it. So I will start the webinar by providing an overview of Enabling Writers Workshop. So as I mentioned, it will be covering best practices, lessons learned from Indonesia and Philippines. And I'm going to give an overview of the program. As we all know, one of the main barriers to improving children's reading skills is the lack of appropriate and engaging materials in mother tongue language. And this has contributed to children being unable to get the reading practices they need in the language they speak and understand. And the fact that around the world, there are 387 million primary age school children who are unable to read proficiently. And 2/3 of these children are already in schools. So to address this gap, All Children Reading created enabling writers competition to drive the development of software technology to make it easier and cheaper and faster to write high quality early grade reading materials in mother tongue. And Bloom software, which was developed by Sillit International, won the prize and worked with enabling writers to create 3,000 plus titles in 15 languages in the countries of Indonesia, Philippines, Bangladesh, Haiti, Nepal. So Enabling Writers program is funded by All Children Reading, a grand challenge for development partners, including USAID, World Vision, Australian government, and URC. The GRN supported its implementation in 6 countries, as I have mentioned. Enabling Writers contributes to the Global Book Alliance objectives, and one of it is to produce well-written, level-appropriate reading materials, which are difficult to find in many children's mother tongue languages, and also to expand access to content by providing open licensed downloadable materials that allow sharing, electronic use, and large-scale printing. The objectives of Enabling Writers program are mainly 3, and one of it is to develop substantial set of high-quality, decodable, and labeled books for adoption by Ministry of Education and for use by schools in developing countries, including Indonesia and Philippines, and the other 6 countries I have mentioned, but also other countries which may be interested in adopting them or translating them for their use. We understand that these materials have open license, so anyone can use them. And the second objective was to develop local capacity for sustainable creation of quality, decodable, and labeled books beyond the scope of the funded project. So our expectation is that after Enabling Writers project support ended to these countries may continue to work with other languages or increase the titles by their own funds, by their own technical capacity. That's why we trained in each country a team of master trainers who could lead this project even beyond the funded project. And the third objective is to produce a large set of quality books using the Bloom book writing software for sharing via the Global Digital Library and other Global Digital Library, the Bloom Library, and other online access points. So that's why you will see that I have mentioned we have been able to create about 3,000 plus titles with those 15 languages. So Enabling Writers program was implemented through a workshop approach, and during launch, 3 local project staffs were trained for each country to support implementation. They included a project manager, writing or pedagogy specialist, and Bloom trainer. These teams were trained for 5 days by university research companies through REACH project, and still lead support. The trainees were selected based on their experience on the areas they will be providing support to the project. And these local country teams then replicated the training to their local book writing teams, followed by a series of book writing workshops. Participants in the writers' workshops included children book authors, teachers and curriculum specialists, and some tutors from the teachers' colleges. Writers needed to possess previous experience in writing children's book, background in teaching lower grade classrooms, understanding of language to be used in the book, and were also supposed to have basic computer skills so that they were able to work with the computer in utilizing the Bloom software. So the overall results, the overall results of this project in the 6 countries is that the program was able to create about 3,000 titles, as I mentioned, created in 15 languages, which is around 200 titles for each language, but the countries went beyond the 3 titles. So here I'm mentioning only those titles which were in contract and which were submitted to us. But also the program was able to train about 497 authors, and these authors were trained on early grade reading basics. They were also trained on decodable and leveled book creation, Bloom installation, and how to use Bloom software to create decodable and leveled books. These books are available at the Global Digital Library. Some of these are already available at the Global Digital Library. So when you follow that link, you'll be able to access some of the books which have already been uploaded, and other books are still being uploaded. And they are also found at the Bloom library. When you follow that link, you'll be able to access them. So the languages include Hausa Nigeria for Nigeria, Indonesia Bahasa, Bangla, Haitian Creole. In Philippines, we had 4 languages. Justin will mention them in his presentation. But they are Cebuano, Bohalano, Cagayanon, and the Kalanguya. I think Justin will pronounce them well than me. And in Nepal, we had 7 languages. We will hear them from the coming webinar, but they include Awadi, Bhojpuri, Totali, Maithil, Nepal Bahasa, Nepal, and Paru. So with that, an overall overview of the program, I now welcome our presenters to take talk their projects in their specific countries. And here I will start with Dr. Gestoni to share his experience from Philippines. And he will be welcoming Leah also to take some slides, but also welcoming the Ministry of Education representative, Dr. Emiliano, also to take part in this presentation. Not necessarily in this slide, but it might be in the coming slide. So Dr. Justin, you are welcome, please.
We are from the Team Philippines. I am with Professor Leah Ladonga, and I'm also with Dr. Emiliano Elnar of the Department of Education. So these are the four languages that the Philippines have been working on in order to create decodable and enabled books for children. And these languages covered are the following. We have Cagayanon, that's from the Cagayan-Oro language. We have
Yes, yes,
Bolanon from the land of
yes.
Bohol. While those languages, these are the languages that have several structures and variations. They are the same in terms of the way how it's being spoken, but it only differs in terms of the structure and its variation. So therefore, we have to contextualize every languages from every area, and so that made us. That's the reason why we have chosen three of these languages, which is Cagayanon, Bolanon, and Cebuano. However, there's a very important language also that we were focusing on, and that was with the Kalangoya language. Kalangoya language is one of the minority languages in the Cordilleras, and therefore has to be strengthened for cultural and language development and appreciation. So this four languages were much of our focus, and we were very happy that we have successfully created these decodable and level books for children. Now, how many books were produced in our end? So these are the total number of titles created. So in the Cebu, which is in Region 7, so total book created is about 400 books. Initially, there were about 400 books. And then for Bohol, initially there were about 400 books. Cagayan de Oro, which is in Region 10, there were about 400 books. And in Baguio City, which is the Kalangoya language in the Cordillera Administrative Region, we have initially produced 400 books. Now, all these books were still underwent field testing and validity process. So in other words, not all of these books were accepted after the field testing and validation was conducted. So how did we do the implementation model in the Philippines? We actually had a lot of models that we would like to share about, and one of which is the top-down approach. So the top-down approach is started meeting with the Ministry of Education from the different regions. We initially presented our objectives about the project and what will be the possible outcomes and expectations for this project, and who will be the participants, and what will be the endpoint of the project implementation. The grassroots approach as well, because in the identification and the checking of the orthography, we also work with communities who are really the primary movers of the language in their locality. So in other words, all these languages really are contextualized and fit. It fits to the needs and to the actual orthography of the community. We also began meeting with other partners and stakeholders aside from the Ministry of Education, which I will be mentioning a while later on, who are our partners. Then at the same time, these partners also helped us in identifying these languages. And then the identification of these languages is based on the reasons that I have presented a while ago. And then we trained teachers afterwards, after identification, after approval of the Ministry of Education or the Department of Education. And then there was a training of teachers, and the Department of Education is actually the one responsible for helping us in determining these teachers. Then after that, we did the field testing of these books. That's what I have mentioned. There were books that were produced, as many as them. However, there are only few of these books which were accepted. And afterwards, the direction is for the books to be adopted in the Department of Education. However, subject to the quality assurance through their LRMDS, or Learning Resource Materials Development. That's the LRMDS. In terms of how we align the materials, the Philippine National Curriculum, I will be turning you over to the Ministry of Education representative. Perhaps he will be explaining a bit about what is our curriculum in the Philippines and how the books were aligned on this particular context.
Yes, we have a new curriculum. That's the K-12 curriculum in the Philippines. And of course, we have the materials, the books that were created were aligned with the curriculum of the Department of Education. So we're just so thankful that we have already available materials which are age appropriate to the learners. and which really have helped in the development or of the reading abilities of our learners. And we thank the project for being able to make our teachers become creative and critical thinkers, and were able to develop and produce the books.
So that's from the Department of Education. And so therefore, the alignment was actually considered to ensure curriculum relevance, quality of teaching and learning, delivery using the books, and appropriateness of the materials to the local setting and context. So who are involved in the alignment? So we have here the following prime movers of our partners. We have the Department of Education, specifically Region 7, Cordillera Administrative Region, and Region 10. We also have St. Louis University, that's in Baguio City. St. Louis University is one of the top institutions in the Philippines that works for a lot of efforts in language development and orthography development at the same time. And they also have the Center of Excellence in Teacher Education in the region. Xavier University Ateneo de Cagayan is also one of the top universities in the Philippines, also one of the centers of excellence in teacher education, who also works for language development and cultural development aspects. And of course, our institution. We also would like to recognize the partnership and strong support of the Summer Institute of Linguistics. By the way, that the trainers, the Bloom trainers and the pedagogy specialists were trained in Indonesia for the use or the utilization of the Bloom software, and that is through the Summer Institute of Linguistics with Paul Frank, who is the lead trainer of the Bloom. And Paul Frank of SIL did a certification process of one of our trainers, who is Miss Maria Ira Benitez, who is actually now in St. Louis University, Baguio, conducting also another training in decodable and level books for children. So in other words, this project has already been replicated with our other partners in the rest of the Philippines. So some government, Philippine government engagements that we have actually done. I guess the Ministry of Education can also share what were some of the engagements that were done in our context.
Assisted in providing sets of participants, teachers in the community, working with local languages or language materials development experts, etc. And also assisted in providing experts in the checking of the stories, illustrations, and field testing initiatives, as well as provided experts in ensuring quality of the books to be downloaded to the learning resource materials development system. And of course, we strongly collaborated with the project management team on other logistical needs support for the success of the program.
Okay. So in other words, the ministry is really working hand in hand with us in identifying the participants, preferably those teachers working in the local communities where some of these languages are of a great challenge. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tony and the Dr. Emiliano for taking us through those slides. I'm now going to invite Johnny from Indonesia. I'm sharing the screen. I'll invite John from Indonesia to take the following slide. So let's go to Indonesia. John, you are welcome.
Thank you, Olimo, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending this seminar. First of all, about the languages, kami hanya dari proposal diminta untuk membuat program dalam bahasa Indonesia sebagai bahasa nasional, walaupun sebenarnya ada lebih dari 700 bahasa di Indonesia. So in the original proposal, we were asked only to provide the program in one language, which is in the national language. Although in Indonesia we have more than 700 local languages. But this is only a pilot project to develop really materials for early grades. and at the same time to introduce the materials in decodable and level text. So with the hope that we can scale up this pilot project in many different local languages, which we have already done after this project finished. Jadi kita ini sebagai program rintisan saja untuk mengembangkan bahan bacaan untuk kelas 1 sampai kelas 3 SD dengan memakai konsep decodable dan sistem penjenjangan untuk kelas 1 sampai kelas 3 dengan harapan nanti sesudah ini kita bisa kembangkan dalam bahasa-bahasa daerah lainnya. Dan so we just with this pilot project we only produced 200 titles, which is indeed very small amount. But later on we hope to develop out of these pilot titles in Bahasa Indonesia in more than these 200 languages, 200 titles, and also in many other languages, local languages. Jadi dengan 200 judul ini kita hanya sebagai rintisan dengan harapan bisa dikembangkan lebih banyak lagi judul lain dalam bahasa Indonesia dan juga dalam bahasa daerah lain. Jadi kami mengembangkan semua topik ini dengan buku-buku ini dengan disesuaikan dengan tema-tema yang ada dalam kurikulum pemerintah, kurikulum 2013. Jadi kami menerima saran-saran dari Departemen Pendidikan dan juga kami harus mempelajari kurikulum 2013, kurikulum nasional, untuk menyesuaikan tema-tema dan topik-topik yang menjadi konten dari bahan-bahan bacaan ini. Buku-buku ini hanya sebagai suplemen dan bukan menjadi bahan utama. Jadi kita tidak menyesuaikan secara menyeluruh dengan kurikulum pemerintah, tapi paling kurang sebagai suplemen yang menyediakan bahan-bahan pelengkap sesuai dengan sebanyak mungkin topik-topik yang ada di dalam kurikulum pemerintah. Yang jadi persoalan juga ini karena berbagai keterbatasan syarat dari sistem penjenjangan dalam jumlah kata dan jumlah kalimat, jadi ini tidak bisa disesuaikan secara bebas juga dengan berbagai topik kurikulum, tapi kami sesuaikan sebanyak mungkin. So we can solve the national curriculum on the themes and topics for the content of the books that we developed. Our books are supposed to be just supplementing materials to help the students know their knowledge about what they have already got in schools. So we don't really provide the books as a main materials for the students. But as much as possible, we have to consult the national curriculum for the topics, for the contents. And in the next slide, Singgi from the Ministry of Education will be providing us with some information about the government engagement.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Janicia, Dr. Chastoli, and also Dr. Lino. I am very glad to see you here. As it is said by Dr. Chia, that yearly we always collaborate in writing. Dr. Chia prepared about blooming application, and even I have a participant in Ambon to do how to write well using the Bloom application. So that, not only that, for the first time, Mr. Johnny Chia with the team were always writing many books, approximately more than 200 books. And then the books are not only to prepare for the students, but it must be approved by the government. It is from the government of the Republic of Indonesia, that is the Ministry of Education and Culture, and the department in charge for evaluating the books are the Center of Curriculum and Books, where I'm working now. And the research from 200 books are really, really helpful, especially for the students or even for the children in many tourist spots in Indonesia. But for the time being, Mr. Chia are providing the books for Ambon, for for one province. So I have discussed already with the governments that what is done by Dr. Chia should be appreciated, especially from time to time it must be strengthened. It must be distributed so that not only in Ambon area can have the books provided by the Yayasan of Suriname. So for years to years, it must be 34 provinces have by the government of Republic of Indonesia. And then we have discussed many times with Dr. Chia and the team that really the books have 4 items or 4 components. The first one, the quality of substance, and second one, the quality of language or presentation, and the third, the quality of graphics. So the whole must be united to be one, so that the books are provided to be the qualified books. And we review many times what is Dr. Chia and team done. Then the research, the books are approved by the governments, more than 200 or 201 if I'm not mistaken. And the first step, 63 books are approved. And then Dr. Chia write again and again until 201. And then really, not only all the books composed by Dr. Chia and team, but also the leveling. You see that in Indonesia, for the time being, are not talking about leveling before it is done by Dr. Chia. For the time being, we talk about the grade, first grade, second grade, and so on. But what Dr. Chia did is the leveling not only for the class, not only for the grade, but also for how the students can read the books from one word, from one sentence, and then to make a paragraph. So the government very, very appreciate to do that. So the next one, maybe Mr. Limo can propose, or Dr. Chia, that leveling are very important. And now in Indonesia, we produce, or even we print the material about levelings. It is inspired, especially from the inspiration of what is done by Dr. Chia. And then you see that the functions of the curriculum and book center, one of them are evaluating, assessing, and giving the appropriate books so that the books can be used in many various parts of Indonesia, in many various parts of schools, so that the books are good enough, quality enough, and then cheap, accessible, and qualified. I think that's the point, Dr. Chia. Maybe you can add that later. Thank you, Limo.
Thank you so much, Park and Johnny. And, but I think we'll be welcoming Leah to present the following slides. Yes.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning here from the Philippines. Actually, we have 4 regions, identified 4 different regions, and that is why we have 2 from Region 7, Cebu and Bohol. We also have from 1 Region 10, and we also have from Baguio City, particularly of CAR. Now, we are actually very fortunate to be able to tap and at the same time ask also the full participation and the support coming from the Ministry of Education. And thus, they've actually identified us very well, at the same time also trained teachers in the field and gave us 30 teachers per area. So with that, we were able to train 120 teachers from the Philippines. And fortunately, after 4 days of the training, okay, we got 100% participation. Nobody quit. And everybody then participated and came up now with the expected output that we had. So with that, we have already or rather identified also the participation, at the same time also the output of our, let's say, of the books, both leveled and decodable. So initially there were 400, and then because we went through screening due to illustration problem, due to the orthography and other issues, so we came up and trimmed it out to 300. Now, when we submitted the 300 books for field testing and at the same time also adaptation, then we came up now with 200 books being adopted. So with these 200 books from Region 7 and then 200 books from Bohol Region 7, another 200 from Region 10, Cagayan de Oro, and 201 books from CAR, we were able to come up now with a turnout of, actually it's 67%. So basically, it's actually a very good percentage for all of the areas. We're in amounting, or rather, with a percentage of 67 in all areas. Now, we're very happy. At the same time, we're also very fortunate because we have also the support of the Ministry of Education. And then these books will be very, very beneficial and helpful for them to supplement, at the same time also enrich discussions, specifically since the implementation of mother tongue in the Philippines is quite a new, let's say, curriculum, and something that is also very new for the Filipino learners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah, for taking us through the results of the project in Philippines. And now I welcome John again to take us through on the results from Indonesia. Johnny, you're welcome, please.
Thank you, Limo. We had about more than 30 people consisting of teachers, lecturers, and book writers. We trained them on the about the concept of the about the decodable and the leveling text, providing them with the leveling system, with the requirements for the leveling, and get them understood about the definition about the decodable text, because this is something still very new for us in Indonesia. So with all that equipped, we finally produced about 200 titles, consisting of 107 titles of decodable with 12 stages, 100 for level books, and all from these 200 titles, we have 76 for informational books. And mostly the books are black and white rather than colorful. The reason for this is for economic, and yeah, there's still pro and cons about this issue about black and white versus colorful books. But as far as we have done field testing and everywhere beyond the Ambon itself, in several provinces, it turned out that students and teachers didn't worry much about black and white issue. So the content and the illustrations were accepted very well, and they are interesting to the students. And for all the books, we have the CC 4.0 license, which can be freely copied, distributed, and even for to be used for commercial purpose.
Yes, thank you so much, Johnny, for sharing the results. And now we are going to a break where we will invite questions from the participants. You can ask questions to just Tony or to John or to me or to any person in this webinar. Oh, there is a question here asking, is there still funding available through enabling writers? I think I will take this for the USAID and the implementing partners, World Vision and Australia governments. We don't have challenges. We don't have funds, more funds available for the project now in the other country or for scaling up in the countries we worked. And we are encouraging the other countries to learn from the countries we have already worked on. But if there will be any funds available, we will let you know as soon as possible. Another question from Elizabeth is asking, how did you fill the testing? This will go to just Tony or Johnny. Any of you can reply on that.
Yes, we chose several several percents of the schools here in Ambon from grade 1 to 3. We make coordination with them, and then we after they agreed, the principals agreed with using their school as to make the field testing. We invited the teachers of grade 1 to 3 and had some training with them, 1 day training with them about decodable and leveling system and the books that we created and how we use them with students to improve the reading abilities or to use with the literacy activities. So we train them to use the books, and then they did it with the students, and then we made some observation with them in the class. And then after that, we asked them to provide some input evaluation about the books, including the contents, the grammar, the language, the topics, the graphics, illustrations, whether it's interesting or what, and whether the content and the illustrations are appropriate for the level of the grade that they are teaching, and provide the input for comments for the improvement. And so based on that inputs, we used to make improvements on our on the books that already developed, and also for the other books that we will be that we would be developing.
Hi. Actually, with the field testing in each area, we have identified and then chosen 25% of the 200 books. So that's like a total of 50 number of books, both leveled and decodables. And we have also asked assistance of the ministry to identify specific schools that we need to visit, both urban and at the same time also rural, so that we could also try to do the field testing among the grades 1 and at the same time also 2. And because of these particular results, we also conducted checking. At the same time, also asked the teachers to do the teaching, the actual using of the books in the classroom. We observed, and we come up now with a checklist And it was also like the focus group discussions that we did with the children, asking them of their impression, at the same time also the usefulness of the utilization of the MTB book that we have actually developed. And we got very, very positive responses coming from all of the stakeholders of the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. We have another question from Margaret Peggy. Asking, will you describe some of the genres developed in Indonesia and Philippines? Maybe Leah, can you start?
Yeah, in the Philippines, we got plenty, most especially since when we conducted the training to our teachers, we told them that we could make use of the MTB book, specifically now tap on different disciplines. So some of the teachers made use of the books in order to be utilized for their math subjects. So there was like MTB MLE, making use of numbers, making use of science concepts. At the same time, there are also several fiction books where the teachers for grade 1s to grade 2 could possibly make use of as springboards for motivation, most especially since there were a lot of stories, both localized and contextualized.
Thank you, Leah. And John, for Indonesia, what type of genres?
Yeah, mostly are narrative, but we also have some for quantitative and procedural texts, like how to do something or how to deal with something, and also some are descriptive for, especially for the informational or non-fictional, like dealing with the math concepts, counting concepts, something like that. That's it, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
We have another question from Douglas Bell. How do we acquire copies of the Indonesia books for use in schools in Sulawesi and other regions? That's, I think, goes to John.
Yes. We will have a special slide for that, so maybe we could postpone this answer until later.
Okay, that's fine. And another question from Annalise from Washington. Who will be responsible for the costs of printing the books? Are there training strategies for teachers to make books, and also how to best use them in the classroom? Jestoni, would you like to start on that? Jestoni,
All right. Actually, for the printing of the books, we are actually partnering with other stakeholders in order to do this. Once this will be approved by the LRMDS of the Ministry of Education, because all these books were already field tested and validated. So we will have to establish for some partnerships with book printing. But before during our training with the Enabling Writers Program, it was reminded by our trainers that this book can only be downloaded online, and teachers can actually freely access or print these books online. However, we also would want to have hard copies of these books, and this is our next direction to be done.
Thank you. Johnny, what would you say about that?
Yes. But we did it partly like Justin has explained. We cooperate with other institutions, but also we encourage teachers to print the books by themselves to provide for the class. We succeeded in doing that for some teachers, but still, it costs something. So we probably need to raise some fund in some other ways for that.
Thank you. So I can see more questions coming. We will have another time at the end of this webinar to respond to other questions. And I would ask Lynn and Richard, some questions also are coming through the chat box. So please, if we can sort them and share with us at the end of this webinar so that our panelists can respond to them. So thank you for sending these questions. We will have another time for responding to them, and we encourage you to send more. So now we are going back to just Tony to get more experience and best practices from Philippines in the following slide.
We are now in the EW model cost analysis, and this is our Philippine experience. The average unit cost will actually reach per books with $50 per book, and this includes the book production, the book writing, the book review, the book editing, and illustration. So we actually did all these processes, which we have produced like around from 1,200 books, and then reduced to 200 books per area. This means that single titles underwent a very rigorous process, which entails really a greater price. If we compare it with the other projects that we have had, this is a bit more expensive compared to the other projects because this has to undergo very specific field testing processes. And the field testing processes, the validators really went to the different areas in the Philippines. And these areas are in secluded areas, which are in the rural areas, which are very far from each other. So for example, in the Kalangoya language, in the Cordillera Administrative Region, the distance from one school over the other is about like around 3 hours from one school over the other just to validate and field test these books. So perhaps because the challenge here is in terms of how really to validate these languages and to ensure that the orthography is really being done well. Some challenges for creating illustrations could be the following. Number one is in terms of localization and contextualization of the illustration, especially that in our K-12 curriculum, it is imperative to really utilize materials which are localized and contextualized. Some illustrations which are available online in the Bloom software is not appropriate illustration, and therefore we have to create or have to design illustrations that are culturally and gender appropriate for the stories. Next is okay, so that's the appropriateness of the gender, and it should not be gender and culturally biased at the same time. Another challenge is the availability of the illustrators once the stories are finished, because not all illustration that can be found in the Bloom software, as what I have mentioned, are illustrations that are culturally fitting. And so therefore we need to hire some illustrators would probably contextualize and localize the stories provided by our teacher writers. The colors at the same time, which is in black and white, may sometimes be a challenge for pupils as they also like colorful illustrations better. So when we did the field testing initiatives and activities, some of our teachers requested if they can actually color the pictures after it is printed in black and white. So that was pretty okay for us once the printing is done, so the teachers can actually do some creativity at some point in their stories. However, when this will be made available online, so this is only in pure black and white, and this is the some sort of a limitation of the software per se. Thank you.
And John will take us through the following slides.
Yeah, the average cost is about the same with that in the Philippines. The proses ini sangat, proses penulisan itu seperti recycle. Dari penulis, prosesnya mencakup dari pelatihan untuk penulis, pemberian gagasan, pemahaman tentang konsep buku decodable dan sistem penjenjangan. Kemudian harus penyesuaian dengan kurikulum pemerintah. Sesudah itu penulisan oleh penulis, kemudian diserahkan ke reviewer dan itu direview pertama kali, kemudian diberi masukan mengenai tema, konten, bahasa, lalu ada perbaikan lagi oleh penulis, review, dan editing. Hal proses yang sama terjadi dengan ilustrasi juga, ada review, ilustrasi, perbaikan, dan editing secara keseluruhan. Jadi proses ini sangat makan waktu dan usaha. We have a recycle process for writing and also for doing illustration. The first step, we had to give some training to the writers about the concept, about what does it mean by the decodable and leveling texts, and then about providing them with the themes for the according to government national curriculum. And then they started doing the writing and the submission, and then the first review by reviewer on the content, on the themes, the language, the grammar, the vocabulary used, and then the writer had to do some revision, and then we do the second review, and then the editing. The same recycle process also happened with the illustrators in providing the illustrations. So it's very time actually consuming. And the next slide. So that's part of the including the challenge. Most of the challenge, I think, as Justini explained for the Philippines context, are just the same that we have also in Indonesia about. And about the illustration especially, it's really indeed hard to find the context, to do the contextual illustrations, especially for children, and also because all the limitation we have on the vocabulary and the number of the sentences. So text doesn't really tell the content to the readers. So part of this have to be explained by the illustrations. So in this kind of job, we need an illustrator who can translate the text into the visual graphic. So this is part of the challenge that we're facing. And it was very hard to find such a good illustrator, translator illustrator in this kind of sense, from text to graphic. And for this reason, partly it was very hard to find the illustrator and rather expensive for that. Thank you, Nemo.
Thank you, Justin and John. So, Justin, we are turning back to you for the next slide on access and the use of books to support illegal reading in Philippines.
This partnership agreement between the government, the Ministry of Education, and the project management team agreed with the following terms based on the memorandum of agreement that both parties will support authors in the development and testing of the decodable enabled texts for children. Both parties will also assist in the monitoring and evaluation of the program, and assist in the adoption of the final decodable and level text for children. So all these processes were actually done, and we successfully collaborated with the Ministry of Education, along with the other teacher education partners, St. Louis University and Xavier University, in order to validate, field test, and at the same time, conduct the process of the adoption of this decodable and leveled books for children in the learning resource materials development system. Books actually right now are currently undergoing some quality assurance mechanisms for the regions with the Ministry of Education. And once approved, so these books will be downloaded to the LRMDS portal of the Department of Education, where everyone can also have the availability of this. How are the books used to support the early grade reading and literacy programs and projects. This actually supports our Republic Act in the Philippines. That's the Republic Act 10533 series of 2013, and that is what we call as the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. And one of which is, as what I have mentioned a while ago, that's in section 10.2 DNH, that our curriculum should be localized yet global, or localized and at the same time contextualized. This is also integrated in the DepEd curriculum for reading literacy, as what Dr. Emiliano Elnar mentioned a while ago. And with the direction that we need to reinforce the teachers to use the decodable and level books as supplementary materials for teaching and learning.
Answer the one of the previous question. The books can be downloaded from that link, Bloom Library, and I saw also in the share list, Chris Weber has also provided a complete link to the Indonesian books. And also we can download it from digitallibrary.io, the global digital library site. Suriname also printed and distributed some copies for free to be used for some schools here in some regions. But we also did some printing on demand with reasonable cost, just to pay back the printing cost, which is very cheap, rather than printing through the commercial printing shop. We are also having a project under Inovasi, literacy project. Inovasi is running a literacy project through funding from Australian government in the East Sumba district of Nusa Tenggara province. So currently we are processing the printing of more than 17,000 books of 180 titles. So this to be used for in the 9 schools for every grades. And we have been using some of the books, but all these complete books will be distributed soon in the schools. So these are some ways that we used so far to distribute the books and have the other parties to have access to the books.
These are some of the lessons that we learned in the Philippines while we were implementing the Enabling Writers Training Workshop. First lesson is in terms of partnership. Partnership must really be strengthened by discussing together the desired program goals and objectives and how they can fit into the needs. So it's not that we implement the project because this is what the project requires, but this is actually what the community and the school requires. So in other words, objectives must really be contextualized based on the needs of schools and communities where we are serving. Second, strong government support is really needed for the program to become successful. If there's no government support for this project, then the project wouldn't be realized, because the bottom line is that all the early grade readers or the children, specifically grades 1 and 2 or grade 3 perhaps, can really access and avail the books, the decodable and level books for them. Third is that there should be a grassroots approach to training must be modeled. In other words, it should really begin from where the communities are, where the children are. That's really the context. And trainees preferably must have a touch base with the community. Therefore, these teacher authors must also have to understand the nature of the learners. It's not that they will only write stories based on how and what they like, but it's because this is culturally appropriate. This should be gender and culturally sensitive at the same time. And then the pool of experts must constantly work together to achieve the desired outcomes. Other lessons learned, I'd like to share it with Professor Leia, our pedagogy specialist, in terms of the orthographies and the development of the decodable and level books.
Hi again. There's also one lesson that we have actually learned, and that is now on the orthography. So orthographies must be finalized and it must also be reviewed, most especially since the implementation of the mother tongue here in the Philippines is actually a new curriculum. So there has to be a set standard on the orthography of each of the language. And then at the same time, the ministry should be able to give us now the standard, so that working with the development of both the decodable and at the same time also the level book becomes easier for us, because there's already a followed standard orthography. And that brings me to the next lesson, wherein when you are a teacher handling also these kids, you must be able to identify which one is decodable and which one is leveled, so that once you start developing and utilizing the books that are let's say made use of and that are also written by other teacher writers, then you'll be able to identify which one to use if your target now is, and if your focus now is on the learned phonemes or learned sounds or learned letters, or if you would like to check on their comprehension, vocabulary, at the same time also on their fluency skills. And there has also to be another thing here that we also have seen based on our experience here in the Philippines, is the fact that there has to be a training of teachers on how to install and make use of the Bloom Pack, most especially also with the talking books, because it's actually a very good innovation for young learners to be able also to listen to what are these talking books, at the same time what benefits can it give to their learnings. And since we have also plenty of issues pertaining with the use of the Bloom Pack, so I think it's also very nice, and at the same time it's also recommended that there has to be this specific training on just the use of the Bloom Pack, so that every time there are problems, every time there are glitches in the program and the software application, then the teacher who is into writing books using Bloom software will be able to immediately address these concerns. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. Now just on, please.
Yeah, in Bloom software, we have also some illustrations. You could install it in the Bloom software, but yeah, most illustrations doesn't fit to the Indonesian context or to the story, so to the content. So we need to look for illustrators to make to provide the pictures for us. And the next lessons is that decodable books are a new concept. So people didn't, at the first time when we started, people didn't know what does it mean by decodable. So even until now, we are still doing some, we have to do advocacy about the the decodable books, and it's good, it's advantageous to use in the literacy or reading activity. And regarding with that, when we did the training, writing training workshops, we learned that it was very good if we start with writing level text first, rather than jumping into directly to do the decodable texts. And it was good to also provide really good and representative examples of books or text for both decodable and leveled books for the participants or the writers, so they can have a good understanding about the content and all the requirements about these texts. And setting up the computers with the softwares are really a really great effort. So probably we had to provide the first day of the training sessions to only deal with this IT issue. So that's what we learned so far.
So I will now be discussing our scale up and integration of the EEW model in the Philippines. So these are some of our directions that we will probably do after the enabling writers training workshop. This April and May, we will be doing a training on capacity building for teacher education professors in the Philippines on the use of Bloom software to develop decodable and leveled books for children, for early graders. This will be sponsored by the Commission on Higher Education through our Center of Excellence program. So we were given 3 million project funding to train teacher education professors also to create decodable and leveled books for children, especially for early childhood educators. Community of practice initiatives will also be conducted to disseminate research and information on decodable and leveled books for children, including strong community support and partnership, because this project will also be scaled up in, say for example, in other languages in Cebu, which also needs to have more attention to in terms of improving its orthography, and at the same time the materials that will be available for specific orthographies. And we will be partnering with other institutions in order to fund this project. And then book development will also be included in the ESD agenda. That's in the Sustainable Development Goal, SDG, sorry, that's SDG 4. That's on quality education. So in other words, the project will not stop from here, but this will be cascaded to the other languages in order for all the languages to be covered for the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. And Johnny, what is the scale up and integration plans in Indonesia?
About the contribution of this pilot project, Singgi from the Ministry of Education has explained some about that. So, but other than that, through our organization, we did presentations and workshops and the seminars on invitation by other organizations. And we also do literacy projects with other institutions. And in some projects, we did some adaptation in other local languages. So like currently we are doing some in the East Sumba area in the local language. And also in Ambon, we also are doing translation or adaptation of the books into the Ambon language. So, I think this, in the meantime, some of the ways that we do for the scaling up the model.
Thank you so much. So we are almost getting to an end to this webinar. After we had those presentations, we have another, I think, 6 minutes remaining, and we will use these 6 minutes for question and answers before we close. And I would like the speakers to respond very briefly so that we can cover as many as possible questions. But if the questions will not be answered here, we will answer them and post them in the GRN, on the GRN website. So let's go to question and answers box here. I remember we ended at Elizabeth, who was asking, could you share the checklist you used when observing teachers checking? Yeah, I think for this, just Tony, Elizabeth, we will ask you for your email so that we can share the checklist for the two countries. I would like to understand who will fund the procurement of books that cost 50 USD. I think this goes to Philippines, and also it can go to Indonesia. So who is going to fund these books? And just Tony, when you explain this, please remind them it's not about one copy, it's about the title, which can create multiple copies.
Yeah, actually, this is one of the directions that we are actually planning. Right now, we are still in the process of validating all these books for LRMDS, as what I've mentioned a while ago, that's for LRMDS. And who will fund is that there are already some agencies, government agencies, and private organizations that are willing to sponsor for the funding of this book. So as of the moment, I cannot disclose what these agencies are, but we are still on the process of checking and finalizing all the books for printing, for printing with the final copies. Thank you.
And for Indonesia, John?
Yes, especially for the books that we have produced or created. Yes, as you said, it has a free license, so everybody can just download it and print by themselves. But the other thing that I think we need to think is to how to create other books other than those that we have produced. So I think for the creation of the texts, it would be much easier. We can have, we can think about some ways, practical ways, how to collect writers together in one place to produce the texts. But I think it would be easier. But the other thing is how to make the illustrations out of the texts. So this is the main issue that I'm still thinking until now, that how to deal with that. So so yeah, we either that we need some volunteer illustrators, or we need to raise some funds for that. So, but yeah, in short, creating texts in quotes much easier than creating illustrations.
Okay, thank you. So let me remind the participants that the unit costs, just Tony and Johnny are talking, are not for a copy of the book, but that was a unit cost for producing one title, which could now be printed to create several copies. Another question from Sachin: do we have planned initiatives so that these books can be accessible to schools and teachers? I think to some extent we talked about this, as the books are available in Bloom Library as well as in GDL, but there is a very less information to teachers on these online resources. So do we have any planned initiatives other than the GDL and the Bloom Library to make these books accessible? Just Tony?
Yes, it's part of our website, the Rubia website, that where we can introduce this, and also to other social media platforms where we can share this to our community of practice initiatives.
Okay, And for Indonesia, John, are there other to make the books accessible to schools?
Yes. Besides using online media resources, we also just use traditional way to deal with this issue. We usually we made some sample copies and distributed to teachers or students or parents, and make some advocacy about the books. So once they understood the benefits of using those books, they could we could provide them on demand further help, either for the online information resources information, or just provide them with directly with the copies of the soft copies for them to print by themselves, or they could we could print it out for them on, but they have to pay back for the printing cost.
Question is asking, can the books be developed in Bloom, be uploaded or linked to e-library of Bookshare? How do we collaborate? Yes, the books which are being developed by Bloom can be uploaded or linked to e-library, and that's why we are doing that with the Bloom Library and the Global Dicto Library, and also other Dicto libraries that will be interested. You can communicate with the Global Reading Network for the other books from other countries. But for the Philippines and the Indonesia books, we have the email on the end slide of this presentation. You can directly link it to Tony or Johnny from for collaboration, because these books have open license, and so they can be used by anyone who is interested. Another question to Johnny is asking, please explain about the process that you received support from Indonesia government for the books to be used in government schools. In other words, how did you get permission from the government? Johnny?
Yes. Yeah, for the, we can talk with the central government in this case, with the Puskubu, the Center for Books and Curriculum in Jakarta. Pasinggi, hopefully Pasinggi is still here, and he could explain more about that. But yeah, for the national level, we had a MOU with the Center for Curriculum and Books to develop the books and to possibly use it in the schools, use them in schools. So the government has regulations to print to get the books published. So they have a regulation for the publication of the books used in schools. We have to deal with that issue. Yeah, the other thing is probably working with the local regional government for those books used in East Sumba. I worked with the provincial government, the office of the education office of the provincial government. So they the one who provided the forward for the books. I think that's the way I did so far.
Okay, because we are running short of time here, we are past 4 minutes. Maybe let's have this one question very quickly, And as I have mentioned, the questions which we have not been able to answer live in this webinar, we will answer them and post them on the GRN website when we post the recorded webinar. So there's one question here: how long it took the teacher training process? How long took the teacher training process? Yes, Tony.
Okay.
Hi. For the teacher training, we have actually allocated 4 straight days, and we conducted the training and asked them to have a lived-in seminar, so at least they'll be able to continue writing and developing their books during nighttime. And because of that, after the training, they were able to produce very raw 10 titled, leveled, and decodable books, but still very raw. So that's why with those materials that the teachers developed, that's where we started processing with the editing at the same time, also with the proofreading. But at least right after 4 days of the training, the teacher participants were able to deliver 10 titled, leveled, and decodable books.
Thank you so much, Leah. So we are coming to an end of this webinar. We would like to thank everyone who have participated in this webinar as a presenter and also as a participant. We will be bringing you another webinar on 27th, which will highlight the best practices, lessons learned from Bangladesh and Nepal, which are also part of Enabling Writers project. So we're encouraging you to attend to that webinar too, so that you can get experience from that side. Thank you so much, and we are expecting you for the coming webinars by GRI. Thanks.